So it's beautiful to see when you ask everyone, what is your need? What is your need? And then everyone starts feeling like, hey, actually, we have the same needs.
Yeah.
So we are connected, just that we just have to find a way to fulfill those needs with a strategy that works for all. But then people are more willing. When they connect on a human level, then we grow the willingness to stretch their preferences. If people feel heard, then they're more willing to stretch. But if they don't feel heard, they grab themselves to their favorite strategy, and they don't give space to the common good, to the whole.
Welcome everybody to the Making Waves channel, and today we're going to dive into world of transformative collaboration and communication with incredible Sofia Mourato, and a master at connecting ideas and people. Sofia has spent the past 15 years navigating the complexities of various roles in startups and the large corporation. Quite an impressive range. Her journey is a testament to the power of human-centric collaboration. In 2018, through a quest for understanding, Sofia discovered nonviolent communication, and marking a pivotal turn in her career. This led her to accumulate over impressive 600 hours of trainings and training in relational communication, conflict mediation, culminating in a unique framework of that champions trust, connection, and well-being in the workplace. I love that. Today, Sofia is a beacon of transformation, empowering teams and individuals to thrive collectively. She's not just about fostering efficient collaboration. She's on the mission to cultivate, I love that also word, ecosystems where every individual's well-being is valued. So prepare to be inspired by Sofia's journey and insights as we explore creating a culture of collective success and mutual understanding. Sofia, so wonderful to have you on Making Waves.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for the beautiful introduction, much better than I could ever do. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anything that you would add to that introduction that I haven't said and you think that it's important for our today conversation?
Well, there was something that you didn't mention, which is something very important for me. It's also part of my journey, and it is my work as a film programmer. Cinema is something very important in my life. And it's where I learned how to be empathic, actually, when we go to the cinema and we choose one of the characters to be empathic with, being the villain or the hero. There's always this beautiful thing that is happening, and I find that also shaped my path to learn empathy through cinema. Through being connected with somebody else and with what they're feeling, what they're doing. So I would add that.
Absolutely, I really love that, and when you said it, it's absolutely crucial part of your story, and we all, right, whenever we go to the cinema, we always have that our favorite character we can understand, or just like being in their emotions, and it's a great start to indeed to work on the empathy and embrace it within ourselves. Thank you for just adding that part.
You're welcome.
And knowing that indeed you came from that movie industry, something that is completely different that you're doing right now, even though we already found that connection. I want to ask you on that pivotal moment in your life. What happened that you decided to change your career path after so many years in one industry?
Well, I was having a lot of difficulty connecting with myself, connecting with my partner, and we decided to go to a nonviolent communication mediator to help us navigate what we were going through. And those 3 hours of mediation were a pivotal moment for me. I learned that day that there was a different way. There was a different way of listening, different way of expressing, and a different way of acting, and even more with practice and with my studies, a different way of thinking, which is where violence comes the most. It's not in the action, it's not in the words. If we think about it, most of the violence happens in our thinking. So yeah, so I was very impressed and curious, and from that day on, I said, I'm going to understand this new language. What is it? And then with time and with a lot of training, I'm not there yet, for sure. It's a lifetime journey, but I do feel the difference. I do feel the difference. And that for me was a change. And at some point I said, I want to share this with other people. I want to share this knowledge, this possibility with other people. And then I start thinking, where could I have the most influence? Because I could start with my family, of course, that's my primary area of influence. I could start with friends, with families, with couples. But then I thought, where do we spend most of our time? And then I started thinking like, well, obviously it's at work. Most of us, it's where we spend most of our time. And then it was a discovery. It's still a discovery, but I tried to focus mostly on the workplace because I think that is so important for us. And now also after the pandemic, we have this hybrid setting where people have to discover how to connect when we are in a hybrid setting, then how to connect after months and months alone at home, and then having to talk with colleagues. So everything kind of came together into me, again, like I always do, connecting a concept which is ecology and nonviolent communication. And why ecology? Because ecology is care. To be an ecologist is to care, for our ecosystem, is to study how the organisms are relating to each other, understanding the interdependence, and then trying to, if necessary, to find a balance so that the ecosystem thrives, that the soil is healthy. So I made that analogy with ecology because I'm always researching, I'm always listening to podcasts and learning. So for me, just connection, like I did with the cinema. I had a connection between cinema and architecture, and then I founded a film festival about films about the built environment. So I like to do analogies. I like to create concepts that connect people, that connect people from different walks of life in a human level. So
absolutely. Yeah, but that is like I just want to jump in because there's so much what you've said, and I want to make sure that we unpack all of that, because you said that nonviolent communication, you've been introduced it because you've been looking for some change in your personal life. And then you've been so hooked by that said like, okay, there is a huge potential to bring it not only to yourself, to your system, ecosystem, family ecosystem, but also further. And I think that it's this movement, or bringing that to that place that we spend the most of our time. It's absolutely brilliant. And in order to go further with our conversation, I would need to ask you to explain that what the nonviolent communication actually is. Because we kind of can think what it is, but I want to make sure, because we had the conversation before and I love your explanation and it was so clear. So I think that our listeners would like to know more about that.
Of course. Nonviolent communication is a communication model. It's a 4 steps model. It's a very simple, user friendly, so it's very scalable. I mean, we can talk about it now and then we can use it after this talk. Obviously, it's simple, but it's not easy to practice. But basically, is a 4 steps communication model that brings or actually tries. Of course, I think that it it really functions well to create a quality of connection between people. That people are heard and that they express themselves in a way that they have a quality of connection that it didn't exist there. So it's really about excuse me. It's really about that quality of connection that creates, then reverberates into giving out of joy and not giving out of shame, guilt, or coercion, which is, if we think about the way we give and take in our world, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of, we do things because we are afraid of not being loved, or we are afraid of not being, of being punished. So in this language, there are no, or at least we try our best as we can. For example, the first step is observation. So we try to say things in a way like a camera, like a film camera. What is happening? So there's something very different between observing and saying something and evaluating, because evaluating, we are already in our thoughts, in our moral judgment. So that's the first step, to learn how to observe something without judging. Then you go, you saw something, something happened, somebody said something to you, that's the observation. What do you feel about it? What is happening in your body? Not what you think about what happened, but what are you really feeling? So that's the second step. Then the third step is, why are you feeling that? The why. So what need was met or unmet at that moment when that happened? And there we also have the distinction. Sometimes conflicts arise, most of the times actually, in the sorry, in the basis of the strategy. So what do I mean with strategy? So I can have the need for growth or development, and you can also have that need. But the way that we use to get that need met, our strategy to get that need met, is very different. Maybe you enjoy doing this YouTube series, and I enjoy going to the Inner Development Gold Summit. And, that's a totally different strategy for the same need, the need for development in our work. So this is also a very important distinction. And then we go to the fourth step, which is the request. So if something happened that we didn't enjoy, somebody said something we didn't enjoy, we felt maybe sad, we need maybe connection with that person, what are we going to ask? So what is the request? So then we make the distinction. Are we making a request or are we making a demand?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, and that's a very beautiful moment when we understand what is the difference between a request and a demand. Can you think about what is the difference between a request and a demand?
So I think that is, if we requests, so we are not maybe attached, or we are taking into consideration that it can be a no on the other side. But I think that if it's demand, it's just that we really have the agenda and we really wanted something to happen. And if we have that demand, so sometimes somehow it feels heavier, the demand. So I already know what I want and you need to give it to me somehow. That would be my understanding.
Yeah, it's very close. What you say is a request and a demand. The difference is our capability of hearing a no. So if we are going to ask somebody something and we think beforehand, what if this person says no to me? Am I going to feel frustrated, angry, disappointed? Then it's not a request. Then I better not ask anything because it will be a demand and it will have the energy of the demand. So obviously, as you said, at that moment, if I make it a demand, I'm attached to just one favorite strategy, and I have
Mm-hmm.
no. It's a, let's say, a momentary lack of imagination. At that
Okay.
moment, we just there's several strategies that we can use, but we're just
Mm-hmm.
attached to one. That's why when we hear a no, it's so impactful because we don't know what to do. But there are a
Mm-hmm.
million strategies. So this is the process that obviously with time and with practice becomes very natural to understand us and to understand also the other. Why is the other acting or thinking or communicating the way they are? That's the second step. But it starts with us, with getting to know our communication, how we learn to communicate, because that's
Mm-hmm.
where it comes from. And that's the positive thing. If we know that we learn how to communicate this way, our daily life, then we can also learn how to communicate in an ecological way, in a care, in a
Mm-hmm.
language of care. So that's the nonviolent communication that was invented by a psychologist in the 60s, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. And then he started to the Center for Nonviolent Communication, and he started spreading and teaching, and so that everyone could teach everyone. So big communities started to be built because of course, the process was not as simple in the beginning, but it took him 30 years to go to a
Mm-hmm.
very simple 4 steps, and it's incredible. I've seen really working not only in my life but on other people's lives, how speaking in this way, having a language that includes both parts,
Mm-hmm.
that takes care of both people's needs or groups' needs. And in
Yeah.
my work, I work with teams. So it's beautiful to see when you ask everyone, what is your need? What is your need? And then everyone starts feeling like, hey, actually, we have the same needs.
Yeah.
So we are connected, just that we just have to find a
Mm-hmm.
way to fulfill those needs with a strategy that works for all. But
Mm-hmm.
then people are more willing when they connect on a human level, then we grow the willingness to stretch their
Yeah.
preferences. If people feel heard, then they're more willing
Yeah.
to stretch. But if they
Mm-hmm.
don't feel heard, they grab themselves to their favorite strategy, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
give space to the common good, to the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like when you were saying, when you were talking about the nonviolent communication, that it requires a lot of self-discovery and self-awareness to knowing what your needs are, what you want to do, how you want to communicate. So it starts again with the individuals and self-awareness. And I love that what you said about when people are hurt, they're willing to stretch because there is this moment, okay, I've been hurt. It's okay. Now I can be open to something that, as you said, that we don't see it, because we have that tunnel vision, because that's what we've been operating in the past, and this is how we want to move forward, because that's the safe place, because it's the
yeah,
known path, right?
yeah. And it's also that you realize that you matter. And to matter is one of the most core universal needs that we have,
Mm-hmm.
after obviously shelter and food. Then it comes to matter and also the meaning. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very core need that when I facilitate collaboration between teams, first I need to reach that point of connection between the teams.
Yeah.
And when I reach that point of connection, of human connection, of empathy, of compassion, of like, hey, everyone matters here, then my work is very easy because
Mm-hmm.
people want to collaborate. Human
Yeah.
beings we evolve to collaborate. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can really see that my work is mostly as a translator. So I'm there translating what they're saying, what their concerns, their thoughts, and I translate that to needs.
Mm.
And then they see that, oh, they can connect on a human level, and then it's easy.
Then
Then
it's
it's
easy.
like, okay, now you just can be creative together. Yeah. So
But
I
you
love that.
first, yeah, but you need to first do the groundwork, as you said,
Yeah.
like, yeah, translate every single individual needs
Yeah.
to connect people on that level, and then you can make a impact, and then it's like then you're going to that ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. So talking about that, because that's a really true true testament for ripple effects and making waves, right? When you start with the individuals and then you're just going bigger and bigger. And I want to ask you about that bigger picture in your life, because you're doing absolutely amazing work and very important work, as you said, on the personal level, but also absolutely in the organizational level that it's needed. So what are your kind of impact that you want to make with your work, you would like to leave behind? So what is your idea of making that impact in your field or in the world? And how does this vision drive your daily actions, daily decisions?
Well, definitely my goal is to connect people in a human level, or actually reconnect them in a human level, and also reconnect them to what is already there. So a lot of people, when I give my trainings or facilitations, in the end they say, "Hey, Sofia, I really enjoy it because it seems familiar in some way. In some way, what you're saying touches me." And then I always say, because I didn't teach you anything. You already know how to do this. You just forget, like we all do with our social conditioning. We forget. We forget that we were taken care of as mammals for 18 years, right? We were taken care of without giving back. That's what our parents do, right? So this being aware of other people's needs, this mothering, that comes from the word mother, is something very natural for us. We want to enrich other people's lives. So, and when we do that, when we learn, when we are reminded, not learn, we are reminded, then we feel that it's like, oh, there's something familiar here. So I think that the impact that I do with my work in organizations that go from a personal level, because I start with organizations that I actually then end up in the individual. So it's a bit on the other way around.
Yes.
So I start with the big groups, but then I think that I really go into individuals, each one of them, and touch them in a different way. Yeah. So that's what I love doing. It's to find this point of connection where we remember that we are all connected, and that we can actually, our brains, so scientific, we regulate each other's nervous system with our words. I can be in Japan and you can be in the Netherlands, and I can send you an email or a text message that will change your nervous system. So we have that capacity just with words. So imagine with another type of connection, also with nonverbal communication. Our verbal communication is only less than 30%, all of the communication. So I really truly believe that every day I try to do a little bit more on my professional life, but also at home with my two children, that sometimes correct me already and say, "Mama, that's not a feeling, that's a thought."
Okay, so that means that you've done a great job in your ecosystem.
So children, they learn very, very fast, and that's beautiful. And that's one of my dreams, maybe for the future, is to also start giving these workshops and teaching this ecological communication, this blend of ecology and NVC to children, because if then the reverberation is going to be much bigger. So in my professional life, I try that my area of influence is the best or the biggest as I can. So I like to introduce collaboration frameworks to leadership
Mm-hmm.
because the leadership is the one that can reverberate the most. They can model it the most, and then it reverberates in the rest of the ecosystem of that organization. So that's my focus. My focus
Mm-hmm.
is okay, because I noticed that if I do one-on-one and if I do only teams and the people that have, let's say, more areas influence in the company are not there, then it's very slow, the process of
Okay.
change.
Mm-hmm.
So for a deep change, it has to start with the people that have the most influence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I think that's, I don't know if I said too many words, if I was clear. But
No.
yeah, it's just connection at the human level and understanding, reminding ourselves of what we already know how to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is to collaborate and enrich other people's lives. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really love that's what you said about, because we've been conditioned, right? So we knew as kids, and then we just kind of
We
kept on going,
unlearn.
and yes, and now we relearning and going back. And as you said, teaching kids, that would be huge impact, and that could be a game changer, because they would just grow with that, right? So that
Yes.
it's absolutely amazing. And I think that it's there's more and more initiatives to go back to schools, to colleges, and talk about values, talk about purposes, teaching nonviolent communication. Those are skills that can just really such impactful in adult life, if kids just be able to absorb. And as you said, based on your kids, they just absorbing very easily. They are just
Yeah.
more sponges. We are less within the time and years.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's also possible for adults.
Of course it is.
It just takes
And if
longer.
it takes longer, that's what I wanted to say. And I wanted to ask, what do you think, like knowing and working with teams and individuals, what is the biggest obstacle to actually absorb that model?
Mm, the biggest obstacle. I found that with the teams that I've worked, it was always very organic.
Mm-hmm.
They really, when they see the process unfolding and when they connect to the needs and see the distinction, it's, I think for me, the biggest obstacle is to have the first session.
Mm-hmm.
After the
Okay.
first session, I don't see a lot of obstacles in my
Mm-hmm.
way because people feel it, they
Yeah.
get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my biggest obstacle is not the organization itself, but how to get to the organization in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's my biggest obstacle. For after that, obviously there is a challenge, not an obstacle, which
Mm-hmm.
is how to continue the path for change
Yeah.
or the path for liberation, because in a way it is a liberation. It's a liberation from our social conditioning. So it might be sometimes you find resistance for that liberation, right? Because people
Of
are
course.
afraid to change. So when they are with me, when we are in the safe environment, doing a workshop or a training, there's a lot of willingness.
Mm-hmm.
But then the social conditioning comes back, right, after they leave the workshop. And a lot of organizations tell me, hey, how can we keep this up?
Yeah.
How can we? And I always say, you need to practice. And I wish that organizations would have people like me in-house,
Mm.
people that could train, that could give empathy, that could guide, and that could facilitate collaboration in
Yeah.
meetings, in sprints, in whatever you call collaboration within. So my dream would be that more organizations would know the advantages of
Yeah.
having somebody that can facilitate and train these kind of skills. Um, so yeah, maybe it's not an obstacle, but it's more of a challenge that I think
Mm-hmm.
it will come. It will come. Companies will understand the long term and not only the short term profits
Yeah.
that they will have, because they will save a lot of money and a lot of time, and they'll have a much better well-being in the workplace if this is
Mm-hmm.
installed into the culture.
Yeah.
You know what I see a
Absolutely.
lot. What I see a lot, and that there's a lot of well-being packages being sold in the last years, and there's millions being uh, spent on
Yeah.
wellness packages with massages, with mindfulness, with gym subscriptions, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want to. And I always say that, yeah, that's really nice and kind, but it doesn't solve the challenge that people need to communicate and collaborate in the workplace. All of these wellness packages are made for inner, personal, individual development outside of
Mm-hmm.
the workplace.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then they're not equipped to see the other, to hear the other, if there's only inner personal development being made.
Yeah.
So that's also
That's
very important to understand that we need to learn how to be together, how to connect.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. So if there is someone who has the organization, has the power to make a change, so maybe that would be great to contact Sofia and maybe do the testing and see the long-term benefit and having a nonviolent communication specialist coach in-house to just really see what are the benefits and how impactful it is. So if there's someone, we're gonna have a
Yes.
link to Sofia's website. Go in and definitely connect with Sofia, because I truly believe that this kind of sustainable change is really needed. That if we're gonna just tick the boxes, well, that's never gonna be a long-term profit. It's never gonna be that the true change and as impactful as we wish to have with our work. And knowing that there is so much possibility there, and knowing what is possible in the future, and going back a little bit to your past, what would you say to yourself if you had the opportunity to travel back in time, and maybe, I don't know, before 2018? What would you say to yourself, or at the beginning of your journey?
I would say read the book from Marshall Rosenberg on nonviolent communication.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have known this very, very long time ago. It would have maybe changed my life or not, but I just really wish I would know how to connect with others at this level. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's it. And then the last question is, because I always like to ask my guests, what kind of in a few words, if you could say, like, what kind of legacy you wish to leave behind.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind straight away is that I hope that my legacy is is that people have fun together and they learn how to connect and enrich everyone's lives in a way that, yeah, I don't know how to explain this because it's something in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And but maybe how I feel now about what I wanted to have my legacy. Yeah, it's just that the interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
That's for me very important.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised for interdependence, and I raised my children also for interdependence. And I wish that we all understand how connected we are. So
Mm-hmm.
my legacy is this quality of connection that
Yeah.
maybe when I'm not here anymore, it will live in the hearts of everyone that I've worked with, that I learned with, and that I shared. my knowledge. So it's a circular process of learning and sharing. Yeah. So I hope one day people say, yeah, Sofia really loves to connect people and to learn and to share at the same time. So, yeah.
And thank you for sharing that. And when you were saying something like that, a picture came to my mind, like very green intersections and people just really connecting in some kind of community, because that's, I think that we are, for quite some time, we are already in the era of individualizations, right? And the community are just not thriving as they used to. And I think that it's also what you're saying. It is this ecosystem. It's about the connection. It's about the interacting and being together and sharing that nonviolent communication between each other.
Yeah, just to add to what you were just saying is reminding ourselves that we can be an individual within a collective. We can be an individual collectively. And that being an individual within a collective doesn't mean that we lose our individuality, our autonomy, and how to do that. And the other way around, that to be an individual, we also don't lose being in the collective. So we don't have to lose anything to be both.
I love that.
That's yeah. So thank you.
I really love that. Thank you so much. And if someone been as inspired and as I am about that nonviolent communication and your story about that, how they can connect with you, how they can also change their lives if they wish.
Yeah, so if you do have challenges in your organization or your community, I mean, you can think about any setting where people have to work together, have to collaborate. So I'm very happy to help. It's important to say that I work with a sliding scale. So sometimes I work with big organizations that have a capacity that is different from other organizations. So there's also always a conversation. So the sliding scale is really something that is one of my values, is to be able to work with organizations of all walks of life. So please don't be challenged by by not